What's up again, viewers? Brian here at 3TR, and today I decided to do a little bit of a kind of a different type of video today. I decided to just tell all of you and kind of give you some of my thoughts on my personal experience that I've had with Resident Evil over my, I would say, 7 years of, I guess I've been a fan of Resident Evil since 2005 when I first played Resident Evil 4, and just wanted to give my personal thoughts and experiences of what I think of the new series direction, which they're going more action, and what I thought of the older games, which is much more survival, straight up horror. I'd just like to start off by saying that I did not play... first Resident Evil came out in 1996. I was not playing that game at that time. I was 6 years old, playing Nintendo, watching Power Rangers, going outside, doing stupid stuff like all 6-year-olds would do. And I would not become familiar with the franchise up until 2005 when I played it that Christmas. And I believe it was also that year that it was also given the Game of the Year award, I believe, which, you know, that's a feat that I don't think any of the other Resident Evil games have done. But in terms of the newer games that I've played from 4 and on, I definitely like, I don't mind the direction that they're going if they want to make it more action orientated, because I'm much more overall in terms of entertainment, much more of an action fan than a horror fan, even in movies, because I guess fear is just not a strong genre of mine. I don't get scared. I don't get scared in movies. I don't get scared at games. However, I was legitimately scared playing 4 because it was the first time I had ever played a game like that. And ever since then, I guess the closest experience to that would be like the Dead Space games, but that's... I think Dead Space did it better than 4 in my opinion, but that's off topic. I didn't get to play the original Resident Evil games until after I beat 5, so I had already played like a series of games afterwards. But my personal thoughts on the older games is, with 1, I didn't like 1 all that much. I thought it was too linear. I definitely thought the controls were not very good. I was literally fighting my controller trying to get my character to go in a certain direction, and then when the camera angle changed, the control completely switched. So like if I was walking this way, and once the camera angle switched, I was then walking forward in the wrong direction, so I had to switch around real quick, and that got really annoying. I also didn't like how you could really run past all the enemies in the game. You really could. Didn't matter what they were. Didn't matter if they were zombies, hunters, whatever was in that game, you literally could run past all your enemies. That's one thing I did not like about the older games, is that the game pretty much gave you the freedom to, if you want to shoot your enemies, go ahead. If you want to waste your ammo on this, go ahead. Although that does add a bit of a survival element to it. It's not like how it is today, how there's certain caps at certain points that will not let you go on until you either kill a specific enemy or you kill all the enemies in an area. But that's kind of something I'm more used to today's game, and that's something that I'm more towards. In terms of story, 1 did not really have much of a story for me. All I remember about it was I was just going back and forth in the mansion, solving puzzles over here, take this key, go to the other side, unlock this door. Now I'm just in another part of the mansion with, you know, and it didn't really pick up till you got to the end. Resident Evil 2, however, was a major step up, and I definitely thought that it had a pretty decent story. I definitely liked how there were definitely different, bigger areas. It wasn't like the mansion, how you were just always in the house. You spent a lot of time on the street, you spent a lot of times in a building, and then you would go into the sewers, and then you go even deeper down into the Umbrella research facility, and I definitely liked the take on that. And I definitely liked how there were 2 different like campaigns or paths you could take. You play as Leon, and the second you play as Claire. I definitely thought that was a good feature. When it got to Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, I didn't enjoy it quite as much, because I felt like they were kind of ripping off Resident Evil 2, just throwing this Nemesis guy that you had to fight over and over and over again, and you pretty much were taking him down the same way, and then when you got to the final battle, it wasn't any different than what you were doing the entire game. So, and I played Code Veronica. Code Veronica was actually very, very good. They did the same thing as they did in 2. However, when it got to the later missions when you're playing as Chris, I definitely thought that was the better half of that game, and I definitely felt that Wesker was certainly a much more provocative opponent in the old games than he was in 4, although he was very, you know, aggressive in the 5th one. I just thought he was a little too easy to take down. And now that we got to these newer games, 4 was definitely an awesome game. It was the first game I ever played in the franchise. It was amazing. It definitely was first. It was ever innovative game, because if I remember correctly, that was the first game that used the over-shoulder viewpoint of action, which today is used in Gears and Uncharted. So you can actually thank Resident Evil 4 for that, for being an innovative game. And it still is my favorite Resident Evil to this day. When we got to 5 I was very looking forward to, because we had, graphics looked great. It was a co-op, although I thought that kind of took away some of the survival horror aspect, because now you could play with a friend, so it definitely takes away the fear. But the biggest problem I had with 5 in a whole was the promotion for it. For those of you, if you guys remember, the whole tagline of Resident Evil 5 was, it was fear you can't forget. And I was definitely buying into that with the way the game was looking, and now that we're kind of taking these enemies into the daylight, which wasn't very scary, but it did kind of acknowledge that this threat doesn't just come at you at night, it can come at you at any time during the day. So that definitely kind of pumped my hype up for it. But when I finally got my hands on it, it ended up just being a standard shoot 'em up game. I didn't think it was bad. I definitely had fun playing it, but it was just very misleading. If it had said something like action you can't forget, then I think I would have enjoyed it a little bit more, been a little less hyped up for it. And now that we got to Resident Evil 6, now that it's taken several different type of moods for the same type of gameplay, I definitely thought it worked. And the fact that it's now going more into an action direction is something I'm definitely for, because in a whole, I'm definitely much more of an action fan than I am a horror fan, because I just don't get scared in games. But I definitely do understand how the older fans do not like the newer games, and I absolutely respect that, because I definitely see how this would have been enjoyable back in the 90s. I just do not think that form of gameplay could work in 2012, because the closest franchise we have doing strictly horror is the Silent Hill franchise, and I've only played one of them, and even that to this day is having trouble doing horror, because horror is just not sellable. It's incredibly difficult to do good horror, or horror that people are going to want to play over and over and over again. It's very difficult to do, as opposed to something that's like an action movie, as in you're getting the same thing every time you play it, but it's like a movie. It's like a great movie you enjoy. You can see it over and over again, and you can enjoy it just as much. I mean, over time you might enjoy it less and less, but it's there for enjoyment. It's there for the moment, not just trying to prolong your fear and then give you the biggest scare, because once you get that one big scare, then next time you play it, you're not going to be scared of it again, because it's coming. As opposed to this, it can play several different ways, although it's kind of doing the same story over and over again. And it's definitely much more of a movie than a game, which, I don't mind cinematic stories, because I'm a big fan of Metal Gear, and that definitely has tons of cutscenes. But my overall feelings for Resident Evil is that if you've played the newer games, it's going to be really hard for you to kind of enjoy the older games, because there's a lot less freedom in the gameplay. As in, if you've played the older games, you're not going to like the newer games, because they're just too fast-paced. They don't take their time. They're just focused on shooting as many enemies as possible, or throwing some great look design creature at you that can easily be taken down, or cheap boss fights. But I understand both arguments, and I definitely support both arguments, but if I had to really pick, I'm much more for the newer games. So when Resident Evil 7 comes out, I'm definitely looking forward to that. I definitely like the direction they're taking with the new character Drake, and I respect the older games. I do respect the opinions of the older fans, but it's Resident Evil. It's just not the right Resident Evil for me, because I started out in a later version of Resident Evil. And with that, I'm going to end the video here. So tell me, what about your guys' experience with Resident Evil, and what are your thoughts? Do you like this new action direction, or do you want them to go back to using straight up horror? So comment down below and tell me what your guys' thoughts. Feel free to talk to you about this at any time. And if you like this video, please like, comment down below, and subscribe to keep track of me and my future videos. And like always, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.